Back with us on the SportsMax Zone, outgoing General Secretary of the Jamaica Football Federation, Dalton Wint, is reportedly set to leave office with a golden handshake. A figure in the region of 9 million Jamaican or $58,500 has been mooted. A letter being circulated on social media purports to show JFF President Michael Ricketts agreeing to pay Wint his full salary package up to the natural end of his current contract, which runs out on December 31, 2023. The letter addressed to Wint is signed by the JFF President. Now, checks by SportsMax have confirmed the authenticity of the letter. Wint has been forced out of office after the Reggae Boyz threatened to boycott Tuesday's CONCACAF Nations League clash with Suriname in Kingston if he remained as General Secretary. So, has the Wint resignation been handled competently by the JFF is the question. We are turning to Attorney at Law, Courtney Williams, for some perspective here. Counsel, good afternoon. Welcome to the SportsMax Zone.
Good afternoon, George. How are you?
Doing very well, doing very well.
Good.
From what we know in the public domain about the Wint letter, and given that we were having you, we wanted to make sure that there are some facts, because we know that you are a man who deals in the facts, that you're in the facts business. So,
Definitely.
yes, the letter that has been making the rounds on social media is authentic. That is Michael Ricketts' signature. The letter was sent to Dalton Wint, as has been shared. And so, the question is, given the circumstances that caused Mr. Wint to believe, to have left his job or to be leaving his job, would he have a case to say, well, wrongful dismissal, or I was forced out of my job? How do you read the situation based on what we know?
Where I understand when I read this story, is that there was a resignation and that Mr. Wint resigned. No, the fact is that the sum that is being quoted as payment to Mr. Wint would suggest that there was some sort of an agreement between Mr. Wint and the JFF. The fact is, a person cannot be forced to resign. That's actually an oxymoron. The law does not recognize it. Resignation is totally voluntary. For it to be effective in law, it has to be voluntary. If it's not voluntary, then it amounts to constructive dismissal. Now, what normally happens in these cases, is the fact that, there's pressure from outside. The Reggae Boyz have made it clear that they no longer believed in Mr. Wint's leadership, and as such, he perhaps, I don't know, I'm speculating, negotiated a settlement because he has a contract that runs to 2023, and in normal contractual situation, you'd have to the man would have had his contract, and you'd have to pay him to the rest of his contract for proper compensation. So, as a lawyer, it seems to me that there was some discussion, and that the discussion perhaps led to what is occurring now. Yeah,
you say, of course, a person can be forced to resign. Very happy you clarified that. So what if, well, given the situation as we know it, yes, Mr. Wint did not come into office and say, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm resigning as General Secretary. There were circumstances which overtook him and the JFF. Isn't there a case to be made that Mr. Wint was put in the invidious position of having to put the rest of
that?
Yeah.
But then you have to. If the problem with this case is that the JFF, there's no indication or any evidence that the JFF did the forcing. The forcing was done by the players, who I believe are outside of the management, outside of the players are not his employers.
Yes.
JFF is his employer. And any case that he would have for wrongful or unjustified dismissal would be has to be taken up against his employer.
Right. All right. So the fact of the life of the contract expiring December 31, 2023, the one that he's enjoying now, and yes, he leaves now, you're saying that the JFF would have acted properly to pay him up until the end, rather than say, well, we'll give you next month's wages and whatever things are due to you in this period, and call it quits. They couldn't do that.
I'm saying that if the JFF wants to get rid of him properly, if there's any discussion about leaving his job early or earlier than the contractual term, then the JFF has to pay him up.
Yeah.
That's the law.
Yeah.
They have to pay him because he has a contract, he has a valid contract, and the contract is enforceable. And even if the JFF didn't opt to pay, I believe that if the circumstances exist such that Mr. Wint has to resign, Mr. Wint could credibly claim that he was constructively dismissed. And as such, the same sort of measure of damages, or the same damages in terms of the money that is being paid, would be awarded to him in a court of law.
Yeah. So if it is that you are advising the JFF, this letter to him that is authentic, signed by Michael Ricketts, your advice to them would have amounted to what is in this letter.
So in fact, I didn't read the letter. Can you just...
Here it is. There it is for you. There it is for you.
Okay. Upon the receipt of your receipt. Okay. So basically, what clearly, what they're intimating there is that he would have already resigned, and based on that resignation, they would be paying him up to the rest of his contract, up to December 31st, 2023. I am saying that if it is that the JFF wants Mr. Wint to leave, wants Mr. Wint to resign, no, whether or not they force him, whether or not they actually pushed him, then Mr. Wint has to be compensated. And that is the compensation that he will actually. So if I were advising the JFF, then I would actually advise them that there's a contract in place.
Excellent. So which would accord with what is in this letter right here. Here's the thing.
Exactly.
There is another part of it that I'm careful not to drag you into. Again, your counsel, you don't deal with speculation, you deal with facts.
Exactly.
So there are people who have said, look, Mr. Wint is going to benefit from this payoff, not because he is properly due this payoff, but because of some other considerations, friendship or whatever. No, I'm not asking you to comment on that.
Okay. Good.
What I'm asking you is that, friendship or not, if the man resigns part way a contract that expires in 2023 and which started in 2020, he ought to be paid up for the life of the contract.
Man resign in circumstances where he was placed in a position that leave no other option but to resign, then the man must be paid the rest of his contract. That is it. Simple
as that. Open and shut. Courtney Williams, we thank you for your time. Clarity has been brought forward. We thank you for your time. All the best.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Good. That's attorney at law in Jamaica, Courtney Williams, with some very, very valuable insight into the contract situation. Because here's the thing. Here's what's been bandied about. That, of course, Wint and Ricketts have a good relationship, and you can't begrudge people from having good relationships. Nothing is wrong if they have good relationships. Yeah? In fact, it's good that they have good relationships. Makes work easier. And that perhaps it is that the fact of Ricketts being paid up, that Wint being paid up his contract, is due to some favor being extended his way. When I saw the story, I wasn't as excited about it or as put out about it as some people were, because I'm saying, but it's natural. If you resign now and your contract, the life of your contract ends at a particular point, at a terminal point, December 31, 2023, then it ought properly, it is proper that you be paid for the life of the contract. So I didn't see it, and I'm not seeing it as people saw it, that, oh, he's getting a favor, they're paying up this contract. And here is an attorney, and of course, different lawyers may give you different legal advice. But here's an attorney who says, yes, the JFF was quite right in saying that up to the point where your contract ends, we'll pay you that and tell you ta-ta.
No, well, I'm actually very happy that we got a lawyer to come on the show, George and Lance, because day after day when we sit on the show, it's to ensure that, the regular viewer who doesn't have the, they don't have a lawyer that they at the tips of their fingers to call and say, officer, sometimes people on social media, and we say that from time to time, they aren't privy to the information that we are. So the clarity that we have brought on the show now would help many of them understanding. I know, well, obviously you're the lawyer on the show, right? You do the questioning when we have the attorneys. So
thank you for clarifying that.
It's just a joke.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they don't need to take it too seriously. Yeah. So you wouldn't have reacted.
No.
But that's why we sit on the show every day, to ensure that our viewers. So I'm happy that, the counsel came on, he made it clear. So now many of the viewers who didn't understand, because to the regular man sitting at home, they're just thinking this man has been bad to the JFF. He hasn't done his job right, and he's getting money. He's getting more money.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about that.
Yeah. The fact is, even though there is very little regard for the quality of leadership and governance from the Jamaica Football Federation, we have to respect the fact that they would be guided legally when they are making these kinds of decisions.
And that Wint has a contract.
Yes, and he has a contract. So, people need to understand that the JFF didn't just get up and, commit themselves to payment to Wint for the period of his contract. They would have been legally advised as to how to proceed, and I think that's what happened.
There's another view, though. There's another view, because you have a cash-strapped organization, and it is that you want to husband the resources you have in such a way that you allow it to stretch as far as possible. In these circumstances, would I, advising the JFF at the start, have advised the course of action that will now see Mr. Wint get what he is due? No, I wouldn't. Here's why. Again, the circumstances. I would have said, Mr. Wint, do proceed on gardening leave. Yes? That is a period where someone has either resigned or has been asked to resign, and you want to separate them from the job so that, of course, sensitive information can be protected and everything. And they call it gardening leave because you have so much time on your hands, they say you can do gardening in the time that you're away, right? So I do that. Then I'd ask a team of my directors. The JFF has directors. People think Michael Ricketts runs the whole thing. He doesn't. There are directors there. I'd say to them, come up with a formula by which we can make Mr. Wint an offer that won't cost us 9 million Jamaican dollars or $58,500 US dollars, because it would be good for us if we could save some money.
It's we already have none.
It's not as if he's a star employee leaving and, oh my God, you're so sad to lose this man and everything else. You are compelled to give him all that he's due. And I try to find a way to save some money. So that's the approach I would have used. Now, I understand from my information that the letter that we have just showed our viewers was not discussed with the JFF directors before Mr. Ricketts signed it. Now, I'm not quite sure how the internal processes of the JFF works, and if that is a matter of course that had to be taken, that the directors had to see. But I think that on such a big decision, there would have been communication to say, well, gentle folks, this is what we're doing. We agree on the text and we proceed to execute. And I'm wondering about the judgment then of Mike Ricketts, because my understanding is that he went ahead, prepared this letter, signed this letter, and his directors did not know that this is the deal agreed with the outgoing General Secretary. Wow. If that is so, and my information is that it is so, something is wrong. And Jamaica, it's going to be soon time for us to talk about Michael. Yeah? We have to talk about Michael. We have to talk about judgment. We have to talk about a JFF brand on his watch that has been solid to the extent Michael Ricketts will be hard-pressed to sit in front of any corporate sponsor and say, invest money in this JFF. Because they're going to say, with all of the things that you have presided over as president, even though you're not in charge of nuts and bolts and nitty-gritty, your general secretary is in charge of that. But you were in charge of the general secretary. Yeah? How is it that you are going to convince me to spend money with an organization that agreed to pay off a man for his contract that ends in 2023 without putting another proposal to him to at least say, well, we tried to save some money. Yeah? And that is a difficulty. Look, presidents of organizations, yeah, there will come a time you'll have your marketing team that goes out and seeks sponsorship. But every president knows that there will be many times when the president has to make a call. The president has to call the CEO of so-and-so. The president has to call managing director so-and-so. And it is the weight of the call from the president that allows that checkbook to be turned out and for that figure to be written and signed and torn and given to you. And I'm wondering, well, I'm not wondering, I'm certain that in this moment, I can't imagine anybody in corporate Jamaica wanting to take a call from Michael Ricketts, let alone sit in front of Michael Ricketts and negotiate a deal. And that's why we need to talk about Michael.
You know, even yesterday, obviously everybody knows that I was there very, very early, waiting to establish the link with the zone. And just random people, and you know, it's just people coming up to me and just they literally wanted to vent, George, about the state that the JFF is in, and you know, giving me history that I would not have been privy to about the JFF from their times where, you know, these kind of things happen, and they're saying that they haven't really seen any sort of change from then. So maybe it's just a culture within the JFF, and you and Lance can speak to it because you would have been here for way longer than I am. This is just me telling you what, the regular public had to see.
Yeah, well, George said some things just now that are very, very accurate and logical. But the sad situation that exists here is that if the Jamaica Football Federation had an election this coming weekend for presidency and Ricketts runs, he'll likely win again because of the relationship he has and the backing he has had from the delegates who put him there in the first place. So if it is that as analysts and as onlookers, we can justifiably say that the Michael Ricketts-led Jamaica Football Federation has failed and has been guilty of a proliferation of bunglings and mishandling of issues. But at the same time, the delegates who vote would probably vote him back in. That, to me, is an illustration of a serious problem that exists in the structure of our football and the governance of our football.
And just for the short time that I've been here, just to add to what Lance said, it's a very close-knit group based on what we've been told. Like, the people that do the voting and everything, they're very close. Even with the situation with Dalton Wint, a lot of, again, these are older folks that would have been around following the JFF for some time, telling me that, Mariah, it's never going to change because it's a group. It appears to me as a clique, and again, just information from the regular man on the street.
The thing is this, the thing is perhaps greed. And perhaps it is a situation where the promise of a feast to parish associations, they vote in the JFF president. The promise of a feast to parish chairman is stronger than the reality of crumbs and incompetence, because there's no parish that is feasting right now based on the largesse of the JFF's purse, because the JFF's purse has nothing to dole out to anybody in any large amounts. So it is that anybody who is minded to support the Ricketts candidacy and the Ricketts for president would be doing so based on the promise of a feast sometime in the future, while ignoring the reality of crumbs, incompetence, and crumbling confidence in the JFF at this time. It cannot be that the president of an organization is seen in a manner where it's almost as if people think that there's a clown in the position of president at the Jamaica Football Federation. You can't have a president who people look at and believe that there's a clown. This is not a pantomime. Your president should not be viewed in the way that Harley Quinn is viewed. It is Pollyanna-ish to be thinking that there's somebody who doesn't command the respect of people and who others can manipulate. It just doesn't sit well. The football deserves stability, and if you doubt the impact of stability, draw a line from the first game of the World Cup qualifying campaign through to now, and how the performances have been. Listen to what the players' lament has been about. The fact is, the instability at the top, the organization of the JFF, rickety, pun intended, yeah? It is shaky, unstable, instability abounds. And all of that bleeds through. It doesn't trickle down like in economics, It bleeds through to the team. And that's why the team has been so woefully inconsistent. We need a change, and we need to talk about Michael.
And one of the things that we cannot get away from is, as you just said, the public perception, which is one of very minimal confidence in the Jamaica Football Federation's stewardship. But I've listened to some of the talk shows on these issues and followed some of the social media comments and so on. And there are people who are taking the JFF side on this, and they're complaining that the players, as we saw with the women's football team demanding a coach change, this is a bad precedent for players to be demanding the removal of people and so on. And some of the narrative is almost coming across as if the JFF should not bow, and the players are wrong, and the players are trying to be too powerful. And that in itself tells me that there is some backing for the JFF, which to me stems out of that same parish and support for JFF issue that I spoke about. But you are right. The JFF, as it now performs, is in a very, very, very unhealthy state.
And even in the interview that was done on Nationwide, and the president was being interviewed, that same narrative lands that you're giving the example of, with relation to the Jamaican public and whatnot, I got some of that from his interview, in the sense that he was basically saying that they're not okay with the players sort of telling them what to do.
That doesn't happen to a strong federation.
No, it doesn't. That's the point. Yeah.
It doesn't happen to a strong federation.
They are in this position because of them.
Harry Kane and Harry Maguire can't lead any delegation to tell the president of the English FA to sack so-and-so or else. Are you crazy?
No.
Or in Brazil, or in Norway, or in Sweden, any self-respecting federation. And he's right to flag player power as a problem.
Yes.
But player power only comes about when the federation is not being run properly.
That's right.
We take a break. Back with more after this.